The European Union has unveiled its most expansive sanctions package against Russia to date, while in the Middle East, the United States is warning Israel it will step back from the relationship if strikes on Lebanon continue. On June 9th, the European Commission formally announced the draft of its 21st sanctions package against Russia, submitting it to the EU Council for review ahead of a July 15th decision deadline. According to the Telegram channel Two Majors, corroborated by Infodef Italy, the package is the most sweeping yet. Key proposed measures include a lifelong ban on Schengen zone entry for all Russian military personnel who participated in the special military operation, a proposal put forward by European diplomacy chief Kaja Kallas. The package also targets approximately 90 Russian banks, adds 20 to 30 tankers from Russia's so-called shadow fleet to the sanctions list, and would extend the existing oil price cap at $44 per barrel. For the first time, the Russian fishing industry would face sanctions. Notably, Two Majors flags that despite statements of EU unity, reaching consensus on the full package remains difficult, with some member states retaining dependence on Russian energy, a structural constraint that has blocked more aggressive measures in the past. President Trump stated publicly that the United States is in the, quote, final throes of brokering a Lebanon peace deal, according to Al Jazeera. At the same time, Trump issued a notable warning to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. If Israeli military strikes continued following the Israel-Iran pause in fighting, the United States would not back further Israeli operations. This represents a meaningful and public shift in U.S. posture toward its closest regional ally. Al Jazeera also reports that at least 8 civilians were killed in Lebanon during this period, with Israeli airstrikes striking the coastal city of Tyre on at least 2 occasions, according to Telegram channel Middle East Spectator. The simultaneity of diplomatic progress claims and continued kinetic activity on the ground creates a significant tension at the heart of the ceasefire negotiations. The Israel Defense Forces officially disclosed that 30 officers and soldiers have been killed and 1,291 wounded since ground fighting resumed in Lebanon in early March 2026, according to the Telegram channel Bint Jabal News, citing the IDF directly. Critically, 48 of those casualties occurred in just the past 5 days, a rate that suggests a notable intensification of ground engagements in southern Lebanon. Because this is an official IDF disclosure, analysts treat it with high credibility. The accelerating casualty tempo adds domestic pressure on the Israeli government and complicates the diplomatic environment surrounding Trump's claimed peace deal progress. A single OSINT open-source analyst on the Telegram channel OSINT Warfare reports that Hezbollah has stopped deploying the Iranian-supplied Almas anti-tank guided missile in southern Lebanon. The analyst notes the Almas offers a safer operating profile than the Russian-made Kornet missile. This observation is currently single-sourced and unverified. However, if accurate, it could indicate disruption to Iranian supply chains into Lebanon, depletion of existing stockpiles, or a deliberate tactical shift by Hezbollah. The implication for the ground campaign would be a degradation of Hezbollah's precision anti-armor capability, though this remains speculative without corroboration. A single Telegram channel, Intel 24/7, reports that Pakistani security forces opened fire on protesters in multiple locations in Kotli, in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This report is entirely single-sourced with no corroboration available in this window and should be treated with significant caution. The event, if confirmed, would occur in a still sensitive post-India-Pakistan tensions environment. Lethal force against protesters in disputed Kashmir carries potential to rapidly escalate internal instability and complicate any fragile stabilization in the broader India-Pakistan relationship. Bloomberg reports that India has halted its approval process for Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet service, citing national security concerns. The Intel 24/7 Telegram channel flagged this report while explicitly advising caution, noting the Bloomberg attribution. There is no corroboration in this window. A sustained block on Starlink would deny a significant commercial satellite communications asset to Indian users and signals a hardening of India's technology sovereignty posture. a trend that has been building amid broader regional tensions and India's ongoing scrutiny of foreign technology platforms. Al Jazeera published a detailed feature in which former Palestinian detainees allege routine sexual abuse, starvation, and attacks by dogs inside Israeli detention facilities. This report is drawn entirely from Al Jazeera's own reporting, and the Israeli government's response was not represented in the source material. Regardless of further verification, such allegations, if substantiated through additional independent reporting or legal proceedings, could accelerate international criminal court processes and increase diplomatic isolation pressure on Israel at a moment when it is already navigating significant international scrutiny over its military operations. Strategic assessment. First, the economic picture. The EU's proposed 21st sanctions package represents a structural escalation in economic warfare against Russia, targeting approximately 90 banks and 20 to 30 shadow fleet tankers simultaneously tightens financial access and energy export revenue. The extension of the $44 per barrel oil price cap is particularly significant if global oil prices rise. It would compress Russian export margins at the worst possible time for Moscow's war budget. Two Majors correctly notes, however, that internal EU dependence on Russian energy among some member states creates a structural ceiling on consensus, meaning the final July 15th package will likely be watered down from its draft form. On political stability, President Trump's public warning to Prime Minister Netanyahu that the U.S. will not back further Israeli operations if strikes continue marks the most explicit public pressure Washington has applied to Israel since the Lebanon campaign intensified. Combined with officially confirmed IDF casualties of 30 killed and over 1,200 wounded since March, domestic Israeli political pressure is building. The accelerating 5-day casualty rate of 48 personnel will register acutely in Israeli public opinion. Meanwhile, the unverified reports of Pakistani security forces firing on protesters in Kotli warrant monitoring. If confirmed, they could destabilize Pakistan's already fragile internal political environment and the wider geopolitical consequences. The central tension in the Lebanon theater is now between Trump's claim of imminent peace deal closure and the kinetic reality of continued airstrikes on Tyre and intensifying IDF ground casualties. Open-source analysts assessing the Hezbollah Almas missile observation, single-sourced and unverified, would note it as a potential indicator of Iranian supply chain strain, which could affect Hezbollah's endurance. In the next 7 to 14 days, the critical variables to watch are whether the EU Council reaches consensus on the sanctions package before July 15th, whether a Lebanon ceasefire framework is actually formalized or collapses under continued Israeli operations, and whether India's Starlink pause and the Kashmir protest reports signal a renewed deterioration in South Asian stability. The convergence of escalating economic pressure on Russia, a fragile and contested Lebanon ceasefire process, and rising instability signals in South Asia makes the next 2 weeks a critical window for multiple simultaneous crises. Follow this channel so you don't miss the next update. This brief is based on publicly available open-source information and is for educational and analytical purposes only.